couple of days meeting-wise, and not least because the MCC and ICC have been strengthened as a result of our two-day meeting. Presentations we received from Dave Richardson, who actually did the 2018 MCC Spirit of Cricket Cavalry lecture, emphasised the opportunities that exist for our two organisations to work together, and I look forward to developing that relationship further. The other body we had input from was from FICA, who provided useful insights into the current perspectives of professional players globally, and the committee was reassured to hear from the ECB about the current plans for its new tournament. And also, sadly, the meeting was also notable for the fact that it was Rod Marsh's last meeting. He was retiring after 6 years on the committee. And I can say during that time he gave us many a good steer, certainly on the wine list anyway. But he's a very good man, and he should be sadly missed. It's one of those sad things that happen, but obviously we'd like to try and get some other faces on and get some other thoughts from different parts of the world. So sad day, but he did us proud. So thank you to Rod. Hopefully you've all seen the presentation or the press release. You have two very eminent cricketers on my left-hand side here who are happy to ask some questions. Obviously John will do if you need, or myself. So if anybody would like to start, or would like to organise this?
Okay, Julia?
Yes, I assume you're talking about a shot clock for the pace of play. I mean, this has been an issue for some time now, over rates. I mean, in terms of a shot clock, I mean, what would the actual punishment be? It seems that fines haven't worked, and that, you know, either people have got to get suspended quite quickly, or there's going to be some kind of in-game penalty. Can you just explain what you mean by your shot clock?
Yeah, well, it probably seems a little bit extreme, the idea of the shot clock, but as most of the members of the committee have been talking about, and anyone that's sat on committees around the world for the last 20 years have talked about the decline anyway of over rates. And once again this year, in all three formats of the game, the over rates have been in decline once again. So we talked about the idea of the shot clock, and that's basically the dead time in the game. It's not going to be when the bowler is at the top of his mark and running in, because it's obviously hard to gauge. Put a certain amount of time on an over to be bowled if there's a few boundaries or whatever that go in the over. So, but the dead time in a game. So at the end of an over, the fielders and the bowlers have to be back into position, ready to bowl by a certain time. That's a non-negotiable. The same with the new batsman coming to the crease. The fielders and bowling team have to be ready when the batsman gets there, and he's got a certain amount of time. Yeah, I mean, we ummed and ahed about and talked about different penalties and what they might be. I think. And we didn't come to a conclusion on what was the right or the wrong, but I would agree with you that the financial fining of players at the end of a test match, one hasn't been actually administered very often anyway, certainly through the last 12 months, and I think we were of the belief that maybe a there and then run penalty in the game would be something definitely worth looking at. You'd imagine then that captains would take huge responsibility in making sure that their players are in a position to go. Through the course of the game, if they're not, or through the course of a day, if they're not in a position for 3 or 4 overs, then there's 20 runs, which, as we saw last week, can be the difference in a test match. So there are some of the things that we've spoken about, because what we feel has been in place for a long period of time hasn't necessarily worked. Obviously, the other thing we spoke about is that it's still the responsibility of the on-field captain to make sure that his team and his players are ready and waiting and getting through the overs in an appropriate amount of time.
Thank you.
Question for the panel. It talks about the release talks about cricketing culture, and especially the incident which happened in South Africa. Just wanted to know that how does one handle the issue? I mean, some experts have gone to the extent of suggesting that let ball tampering be legalized because the rules have changed so much in favour of the batsman. So have you talked about how to bring about a balance?
Yeah, I actually thought this question might be directed at the only Australian on the panel, but so I'll answer it. But we talked about a number of different things. Obviously, the ball tampering issue was one that was right at the top of the agenda, and how do we best go about stamping it out? I think we're all in total agreement with what the ICC have done by strengthening all the penalties on that ball tampering offence, which and as a group we were talking about the stance that Cricket Australia took and how harsh that stance might have seemed to ban players for 12 months and 9 months respectively. it's probably got the desired outcome. That's sort of a shock, I guess, to world cricket. I think it probably had the desired outcome. But at the end of the day, you know, we believe a really holistic approach has to be taken, not only on the ball tampering side of things, but on the culture of the game, country by country, to be honest. I think it's still within the capability or the hands of every home board to make sure that their team is playing the game in the right way. And we understand with this loosely worded, if you like, spirit of cricket, that's sort of interpreted in a different way in every country. So it's definitely still up to the home bodies to make sure that their team, their captain and their players are playing the game the way the game is supposed to be played.
Is it also to think the ball tampering that happened involving Australia and South Africa different from other ball tampering incidents? And do you expect or do you want other national boards also to take such strong action?
I think that needs to happen, yes. I think there does need to be some level of consistency across each board with the way that they handle these sort of issues. You know, we've seen ball tampering incidents happen probably more consistently over the last 5 or 6 years. And to my point, I think it's because little things have sort of crept into the game that have allowed it to get to a certain point. And you know, the tipping point of that was a totally premeditated act that the Australian players took part in South Africa. I think that the consistency, and that's why I think we're all very supportive of the ICC stance to actually get on the front foot and actually penalise anyone that steps out of line a lot more harshly than has happened in the past.
John? There's been a lot of speculation and talk about how the new 100-ball competition might work. Was Sanjay Patel able to give you any specific details?
Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, he did. He was invited by the committee. He spoke about how they're looking at it. 5 ball over or 10 ball at a go. As you said, 100 balls, and they're still trying to get it right. But it's something which they're really keen on and trying to do something different than the usual 18 teams, depending on the venues. But they'll be pretty flexible, and they still are on the way the laws are going to be. But they're trying to make it different from the T20, especially. If you're bowling well, the captain can use 10 balls in one go instead of just 6, which we're used to, 5 ball over. So different methods,
So the 5 ball overs and that's back-to-back 5 ball overs from the same mini 10 balls, that looks pretty much confirmed.
Basically, they're still developing the concept. They came to our committee ready to talk about new formats because as the custodian of the rules of the game, what we're concerned about is if you modify the game of cricket too much, it ceases to look like cricket. So what we heard this morning from Sanjay was quite reassuring. That relatively little modification on what you normally regard as a game of cricket. They're still developing how the final format will be. The current thinking is 25 ball overs. But today was part of their consultation, so they wanted to know what we felt about that. We threw a few questions back at them about what other modifications there might be. There weren't many others, so we were quite reassured about that.
I was wondering, Ricky and Surab, obviously particularly familiar with the Big Bash and the IPL. I wonder whether you can see the need or even the point of having a competition that's 100 balls and involves 5 ball overs when the 2020 format is so successful across the globe.
Yeah, I think that's the point though. I think the reason that they are looking for something different is that the T20 game probably hasn't reached the level here in England as it has in some other countries. And listening to some of the feedback that they've received was a lot of the feedback that they heard from people that are not necessarily cricket lovers is that they find the game of cricket boring and not interesting. So they're trying to find a way to actually attract new audiences and make the game slightly different. As John alluded to there, I'm not sure they're totally got their head exactly around how they want the game to look. They're even talking about it not being called overs, it's just 100 balls. So it's 20 lots of 5 is the way they're looking at it. So all sorts of things there that they need to get their heads around. I mean, it's still at a very embryonic stage just yet, but I think, when is it, 2021? 2020 comes in, so that time's going to come up on them pretty quickly. And I think the more, I guess, focus groups and discussions they can have with committees and panels like us, the better off they're going to be in the long run.
Yeah. I just followed up on with the modifications that John, you said, you were reassured that they weren't going to be too difficult. What about things like 15 aside, more players in the team, the muted.
Yeah, at
And
the moment,
surely then that's not going to happen.
yeah, at the moment they're looking at maximum having a substitute fielder, but I think what that's about is performance, so having the best fielders out there at the right time to field. But at the moment, as far as I can make out, they'll have 11 batsmen, they'll have, as I say, they won't have overs per se, but 100 balls, 20 balls per bowler. Apart from that, it will look like a normal game of cricket.
Questions for the panel is that since the press release is talking about the MCC support towards the inclusion of cricket in 2028 Olympics, so I would like to know how the MCC would like to help out ICC and convince probably some of the boards to send their teams in this tournament.
Right. Yeah, well, as part of the global cricket survey, I guess, that the ICC undertook, there were quite alarming numbers from cricket fans out there of
87%.
87% of people wanted to see the game in the Olympics. And it's something this panel's been talking, or committee's been talking about ever since I've been on the committee anyway, so for the last 2 or 3 years, and thinking about what other markets can open up and expand as a result of the game being in the Olympic Games. Obviously, there are some challenges with that as well. The amount of teams, the amount of athletes that actually need to be included into an Olympic Games. Venues, obviously, are issues and concerns for everyone, I guess, when you talk about having cricket in the Olympics. But it's one thing that the fans are saying that they'd love to see. So I think it's up to us as a committee and the ICC to do whatever we can and work together to give cricket its best chance of actually bursting into an Olympic Games. And I think all of us would love to see that at some stage down the track.
Thank you.
Also, one other point, the women hopefully will be competing in the Commonwealth Games in 2022 as well.
Birmingham.
So you're not just looking at the Olympics, but the Commonwealth Games as well, which will be hugely important too.
Okay. Yeah, we know that the one board which is against cricket Olympics is BCCI. So, in case BCCI doesn't relent, will there be a suggestion to probably go ahead without India? Is that an option or it's not an option at all?
Well, we haven't discussed that far yet, so we'll get there. We'll cross the bridge once we get there. 2023 is a long time away. The next Olympics is 2024, where cricket will not happen.
But time is running out. 2028.
It's still not that close yet. So I'm sure once it's decided, the BCCI will be consulted and will take it from there.
Question to Vicky. So last evening at the coffee lecture, there was just a point about numbers leading towards 4-day cricket and test matches ending in 4 days. What is the committee's opinion on 4-day cricket as well as day-night test cricket?
We didn't necessarily talk about 4-day test match cricket in this meeting. I think there's probably been split opinions across the committee in the last 3 or 4 years about 4-day cricket. I mean, some of the stats we're seeing, there's more and more games this year anyway have actually finished, test matches have finished in 4 days. One other great thing we're seeing in the test game is there's less and less draws happening around the world as well, which is a really positive sign for the test match game. We did talk about the day-night cricket, test cricket, and how successful that's been in different markets around the world as well. So at the end of the day, I think this committee is very open to innovation, trying to find what's going to be best for every format and how we can make all 3 formats work well together. So if it comes to the stage where there's a unanimous push for 4-day test cricket, then that's obviously something that we'll talk about more as well. But that didn't happen this last couple of days.
So next year, as you probably know, we're staging a 4-day test for Ireland here at Lords. The ICC strategy is to have 4-day test cricket for developing nations to give them an opportunity to play against 4 member countries. So as part of that strategy, we're pretty supportive. But overall, MCC still believes in test cricket retaining as a 5-day concept.
Can you sort of talk about day-night test cricket? You are in favor of day-night test cricket?
Yes, I am actually a believer of day-night test cricket, and I feel that's the way crowds can come back to the test matches, especially in India. But obviously, the Indian board has resisted, the players have resisted for a while, and we have to wait and take a call. It's played in other parts of the world, whether it's in South Africa or whether it's in Australia. Yes, I know that the Indian board has their own ideas. Obviously, that's not within the rights of the MCC to recommend it and wait for everyone to accept it.
Have they told you what the resistance is about?
Well, it was decided actually in the technical committee meeting last year that there will be a day-night test in Rajkot with this season actually with
West Indies.
but obviously the team management have their own ideas and communicated that it's still not really give me the ball, give me the people using in the night. It's the Kookaburra ball, SG test doesn't have the big ball in it, which is normally used in playing test cricket in India. You have to bring in the Kookaburra ball, so there are a lot of issues which has to be solved. So I think that's gone through right now.
While you're on, for you and Ricky, maybe sort of discussing balls, it has been mentioned by a couple of former England captains that perhaps the Duke's ball should be used around the world for Test cricket. Just wondered if that has come up at all, or what you might think about the idea of just using the Duke's ball for Test cricket.
I think it was the other way around, talking about the Kookaburra being used around the world as one cricket ball, but England has its own charm, and I think that's the challenge with England. You face the swing and the screen, and the Duke's ball has been used for a long period of years. India is the yes. The Duke ball is different from the Kookaburra, so I think every country has its own challenges. I think there will be implementation of that. There's a discussion about using the readers or the Dukes as the white ball, the two white ball issue, which has come up. So that's being discussed. A lot of us are in the favor of using the white ball, one white ball, just trying to improve the quality, because as we have seen, the new Kookaburra doesn't swing much as it used to do in the past. So these are all issues with the ball manufacturers, and has to be communicated with them. But we discussed about the one ball, the reverse swing, as the ball changes its color after the 34th over, try and do something different, maybe keep balls ready which are already colored but 34 overs old, which makes it softer, and use it for the remainder part of the game. Because as you see, the reverse swing in white ball cricket has declined over the years. You're playing with each end, you're playing with 25 overs. The runs have gone very high. England in the last 4 years have crossed 300 more than 30 times, which is the highest by any cricketing country in the world. So these have been discussed, and the message will obviously be communicated for final implementations.
Ricky, can I get your thoughts on?
Yeah, well, as you know, Mel, in Australia, last summer, Cricket Australia decided to trial the Duke's ball in Sheffield Shield cricket for the back half of the season. I'm not sure what that was with the plan of having that as the one ball to use all around the world. It was more of maybe educating our players, batsmen in particular, how to play the swinging ball better. Because we've been brought undone a few times coming here to the UK and facing Anderson and Broad and Co with that type of ball. So I spoke to a lot of the players back at home. They said it was a little bit more difficult using the Duke's ball at home. It swung a lot longer through the course of an innings. So there's some good learnings there. But as we know around the world, it is a part, I think, a bit of the charm of our game is travel to different countries, you experience different wickets and different conditions, and some places use a different cricket ball. It'll probably forever be a topic about just having uniformity with one ball, but certainly where I sit now, I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that there's different balls in different countries.
We talked about the ball tapping again. Sarah just mentioned the reverse swing. Obviously, to a point, one is going to, when you cut down the ball tapping that much, you will eventually cut down on the reverse flips, especially when they fix it. I would think quite used to get it. Have you thought about maybe trying to find an all-encompassing, more legal way of promoting reverse swing?
I think reverse swing is not always connected to ball tapping. It also how the condition of the ball gets over a period of time. In some continent it happens more. There's a lot of dry pitches, rough outfields, and it may be a little less in these parts of the world where it's green and the pitch has got a lot of grass on it. So it depends on the England did reverse a lot in 2005 when Ricky was captain of Australia, flipped off and arms and Jones got the ball to reverse. So it's not always connected with this crashing of the ball. And in modern day with television, with so much of television, if you do something different with the ball, it will be found out. So reverse swing will continue. Actually, it depends on how old the ball gets. What happens in the modern day one-day cricket is that the ball remains new for a long period of time because it uses two balls, and also 5 fingers in the ring, different stages in one-day cricket. Just makes life a lot more difficult, especially for spinners with 2 balls.
I think it's fair to say as well that this committee is forever talking about pitches, and I think if we can somehow strike the balance right between bat and ball, the only way to do that is to have a wicket that actually is going to maybe not have to worry about it, get the ball to reverse swing. I mean, we saw last week, what a fantastic test match we saw last week, where there was just enough in it. If you batted well enough, you could make runs, you bowl where you could take wickets. That's because the ball did something right the way through the course of the game. So you would have seen every player last week keeping the ball up all the time, trying to keep the shine on the ball, because there was a really good balance between bat and ball. I think it's the reason that this reverse swing thing has become such a big issue for the last 10 years is because the wickets have got flatter and flatter. There's been nothing in it for the bowlers, and they've been trying to find a way to keep themselves in the contest. So let's look at wickets, have a fair playing surface for everybody, and I think that'll look after itself from there.
Thanks.